So again, what it comes down to is the central bank's independence, because Trump didn't like Lisa Cook's policies, and if he's able to remove her by one means or another and replace her with someone more aligned, that means that the president has much more control over the Fed than was thought.
Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Bedford, and I'm here with policy editor Joe Lawler. Joe, a lot has happened since we last sat down and talked. President Donald Trump has fired Fed board member Lisa Cook over allegations that she committed some sort of mortgage fraud, and now she is suing the Trump administration. So catch us up. What all happened with Lisa Cook this week? What's the reaction been like?
Yeah, so this is a case that will really go to the heart of the Fed as an independent central bank and what that means for this country. So Trump fired her over these allegations that she engaged in mortgage fraud, namely signing two mortgages as her primary residence, which you get benefits for your first home, your primary residence generally when you get a mortgage. So Lisa Cook has now sued to block Trump from firing her from the Fed, and this is going to be litigated in the courts. And we don't really know how it's going to shake out. Nothing like this has happened before. We haven't seen an attempt to fire a member of the Fed like this. What it comes down to is the central bank's independence, because Trump didn't like Lisa Cook's policies, and if he's able to remove her by one means or another and replace her with someone more aligned, that means that the president has much more control over the Fed than was thought.
So Lisa Cook has filed a lawsuit challenging her termination. She's hired Abby Lowell, who's very booked and busy these days with all of the fired officials and the people Trump is targeting. What do you make just of the cursory read? It's still kind of new, but of the strength of her challenge to Trump?
Yeah, the interesting part about the challenge is it doesn't get to the facts about whether she committed mortgage fraud at all. It's really about whether the president has the authority to fire her. So under the Federal Reserve Act, a member of the Fed board can only be removed for cause. And her lawyers are arguing that in this case, cause was not demonstrated. So at some point, they will have to get into the facts about whether or not what she did constitutes cause for removal. But that's what it really comes down to is, does the president have this authority?
So let's say that all of the allegations, exactly as presented by Bill Pulte and Donald Trump, are true. It's true that she did claim two primary residences within a 2-week span and then listed one of them for rent. Taken at face value, is that cause, and is it a court that gets to determine whether that's cause? I mean, what happens if that turns out to be true?
Yeah, so if it turns out to be true, it is a form of mortgage fraud. It is the kind of thing that is maybe in a sense a victimless crime, but actually does cost a lot of money to a bank who gave a loan on the perception that it was for a primary residence, and it turns out it's not. So this is the kind of thing that maybe in a different set of circumstances could be considered a serious issue. What we've heard in our reporting is that there's a separate issue here, which is that this is clearly an effort by the Trump administration to go out and find a reason to take aim at Lisa Cook and also other members of the Democratic Party and other perceived rivals or enemies of President Trump, from Bill Pulte at the FHFA, looking at them for mortgage fraud. But yeah, on the merits, it's a serious claim, which she's acknowledged, and she's said that she'll provide all documentation and address the specific claims about fraud as they were presented.
So if you sort of parse this, and sticking with the assumption that it's true, we don't know, it could be false, but Trump firing a board member who opposes him is a bad look politically, right? I mean, it looks like retaliation, smells like retaliation. So how do you sort of navigate, what do you give more weight to, right? The retaliation part or the fact that someone who's sort of in charge of regulating interest rates that affect other people's ability to buy houses is herself gaming the system? I mean, what gets more weight in the end? Like, how do you think that shakes out?
Yeah, I think politically for Trump, it's helpful to change the conversation a little bit on inflation and interest rates. Right now, someone who wants to get a home loan, to qualify for a home loan, is looking at rates of like 6.5% or higher for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. And that's a serious concern for the electorate right now. That's a serious liability for President Trump. So the extent that, and he clearly recognizes it as such, which is why he's gone so hard against Fed Chairman Jerome Powell and the Fed generally. And I think that anything he can do to create a sense of trouble at the Fed is helpful for him politically, in his own mind at least. Whether that's going to actually help him with voters is another question. But clearly he sees that as in his advantage.
And finally, I think we've talked about how it's almost Trump might actually be working at cross purposes with himself. Like the more he goes after the Fed, the more it wants to insulate itself from this perception that it's capitulating and doesn't lower interest rates. Do you think this might cause Jerome Powell or others to make different decisions going forward to sort of push back on this interference from Trump?
Right. I think that Jerome Powell has said many, many times that he wants to make decisions based on the data and not on those political considerations. I think that's probably right. Certainly it has created this effect where potential members of the Fed, or maybe even people at the Fed right now who are interested in a promotion from Trump or being appointed by Trump, are laying out the case for rate cuts more forcefully. So that's the dynamic we're seeing right now.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
You can get more from Joe and the rest of the policy team at washingtonexaminer.com.